Good morning from here, MDF, and I'm really happy to talk to you now because I want to do you a little reading. I know you aren't expecting this, but I've done a few of them recently for friends, and I think it's about time I subjected you to one, whether you like it or not. Um, and I've had a look through. I like to choose something that has some connection with with your current life. Um, my collection of Australian fiction isn't great at all. I'm kind of slightly, well, I don't know, off-put by the toxic effect that Germaine Greer and Kathy Lett have had over here on our publishing industry. Is that horrible and harsh? I'm really sorry if you're fans of them. I'm very sorry. That was a horrible thing to say. I do have my reasons. um, but we shall put them aside for a moment. Well, I'd like to put them aside forever. And go for something that I think is universally acclaimed. Um, oh, I'll tell you all about one Australian writer who I do know is Jessica White, and I've got her books somewhere in this house, but that's what I was looking for, and I haven't been able to find it. She's sort of distantly related to the Patrick White, very distantly, but I'd love to read Voss for you, but I think that might be a bit intense. This is not intense, but it is wonderful, and I'm sure you know it, if not, probably have read it. Um, Wonderful evocation of your history and the atmosphere in a developing country. I don't mean that economically developing. I mean in a country that's unsure of its own existence, unsure of its identity. Um, right, this is meant to be his words, not mine, so I'll stop. It's my favourite Keneally book. Um, Actually, probably no. I think I've read two others, but they haven't made the impression on me that this did. I haven't actually read Schindler's Ark. I can't remember what the other two were now. I'm going to have to sort out, like I said, my knowledge of Australian fiction very shortly, because I rather think it might be fun to explore, as most things are with you. Um, this is, I'll tell you what it is now. It's a river town, and I remember loving this enormously when it first came out, and I'm really glad to have another look at it again. So I'll just give you a few pages, a couple of pages probably at most, because I am tired and my voice is weird. Let's see how we get on. Thomas Keneally, A River Town. Part 1. On a hot morning in the new year, a black police wagon went rolling along Kempsey's Belgrave Street from the direction of West Kempsey. All of this in this valley of the Maclay on the lush and humid coast of New South Wales. The wagon attracted a fair amount of notice from the passers-by and witnesses. Many shop owners and customers, in fact, came out onto the footpaths to watch this wagon be drawn by, and most of them waved mockingly at the dark barred window of the thing. Tim Shea, of Shea General Store, stayed behind his counter, but looked out with as much fascination as anyone as the wagon passed. 2 constables on the driver's seat, and Fry, of the sergeant of police, riding behind. The prisoners inside the wagon were being taken to Central Wharf for shipment aboard the SS Burrowang to their trial in Sydney. They were the abortionist Mrs. Mulrooney and her husband Merv, both of them about 50 years of age. Just before Christmas, Mrs. Mulroney had been visited by a young woman she did not know, and who offered only a first name of convenience for the purpose of the transaction. Mrs. Mulroney fed the young woman some of the standard drugs of her trade, but the patient had, at some stage, instead of miscarrying her unwanted baby, gone into convulsions and perished. Panicking, the Mulroneys had cleaned her body, packed her into a large boot box, and driven her by night upriver to Sherwood, where they had added some stones to the box and released it into the river. The box had perversely floated through, and was found the next day wedged among logs on the river bank. It was traced almost immediately to Mrs. Mulroney. But she and her husband were obviously sincere in their inability to give the woman a meaningful name. A number of other citizens were similarly incapable of putting a name to her. She was said by the police to be no more than 19 years old. To help in identification, the Commissioner of Police in Sydney, nearly 300 miles south, authorised one of the Kempsey surgeons, in accordance with long police practice in such affairs, to separate the head from the rest of the body. The remains were then given burial on the edge of the cemetery in West Kempsey. But, to assist the police, the head was preserved in a flask of alcohol. When the Mulroneys were shipped south, the flask remained to torment the dreams of some, and to shock and chasten even the hardened citizens of the Maclay. The age to some was otherwise hopeful. Hard times were said to be ending. Within a year, the 6 former colonies of Australia would, to suit the new century, fall into line as a new federal commonwealth. Commonwealth, a flowering, bountiful word. But on hearing of this police severing of the unhappy girl, some may have been seized by the superstition that a new spate of barbarities would be let loose. Despite and because of himself, Tim Shea was one of those. I beg your pardon, that wasn't chapter 1, it was just a prologue. It's got a very strange pagination, this book. Chapter 1's coming next, and I'd love to start it now, but I think... Oh yeah, I will. I'll start it now, do 2 pages. So this is officially chapter 1. That was quite a spooky little, morbid little introduction, wasn't it? Let's see if things continue in that vein. Chapter 1. Anniversary day today. The birthday of Australia, as the newspapers liked to say. Today everyone could suit himself and not fret much about the severed girl. What Tim Shea loved was to read newspapers in peace. He used his slight fever as an excuse for not going down with Kitty and the children to the entrance of the Agricultural and Horticultural Association's chartered steamer for the day, SS Terrara. It stuck entirely to the river, poor old Terrara, unlike the sea-going Burrowang. It would creep along the broad, heat-struck reaches of the Maclay, towards the sandbar marking off the deep green river from the Pacific's blue glitter. The old tub would take that peculiar kind of riverine forever to get there too. It would drift, for example, up to the pier at the Smithson Creamery to collect further picnickers, and then edge by Summer Island, where dengue fever had been a force throughout the new year. Mosquitoes from ashore there would certainly be able to outpace the Tarara. So, keep the veil down over your face, Kitty. Then, after another 2 hours of mudflats and mangroves, Jerseyville. Kitty, his beloved stranger and spouse, could look at the pub at Jerseyville without nostalgia, though he never could. He'd come close once to getting the license to sell spirit there. The Jerseyville pub brought out the darker feelings so strong in his character. Whereas Kitty was not touched by nostalgia and regret, she could be... Sorry, that was bad reading. That was a sentence. She could be imagined pointing to the pub and saying to the children, "That's where Papa and I nearly lived. Then you would be a Jerseyville kid. And your little sister." Last night he'd taken some influenza mixture provided by Mr. Nance, the pharmacist of West. He was still too drowsy when Kitty bustled up to wake the children. And that was the thing. Could he have faced it? Could he have faced the Empire Loyalist effusions of the chairman of the A&H, Mr. M. Chance? The references to our beloved and gracious Majesty the Queen. God forbid anyone should cut into a picnic pie or open an ale bottle in New South Wales, unless some old bugger like Chance consecrated the whole bloody indulgence to Her Majesty. Yet Kitty would have no trouble with any of that. Watching with a smile while Miss Chance and Dr. Urson were persuaded to climb the combings and recite or sing, Kitty could let their references to the perils Britain found herself in Africa, of Australia's duty in the face of those perils, of New South Wales's responsibilities, and all the rest of it, slide off her. To her all that stuff was just like band music at a picnic. It didn't make a dent in the sunlight. What were matters of private principle to him were matters of what came next to her. A happy, happy soul, that Kitty. Drank stout and farted as unabashedly as a farm horse, in particular when with child. Melancholy didn't claim her. Excellent. So that's the first introduction and the first 2 pages of chapter 1. Hope you enjoyed that. And I'll continue with that or with anything else you'd like at some point in the future. Alright, all the best. Bye bye.